Imagine living your life knowing that there is something deeply hidden, a secret capable of completely changing your reality. Have you been feeling like something isn't right? Like there's an invisible force sabotaging your every step, manipulating your thoughts and emotions without you even realizing it? What if I told you that what you believe about yourself could be a meticulously constructed illusion? Welcome to the Eye of the Soul channel. Our perception of reality may not be what it seems. For centuries, ancient civilizations and sacred texts have suggested that the world as we know it is just a projection, an illusion created to limit our true understanding. This idea is not new. It appears in the Vedic scriptures of India as the concept of Maya, in Platonic cave teachings, and in various spiritual traditions around the world. Have you ever had the feeling that something bigger is happening beyond what your eyes can see? This intuition may be a glimpse of the underlying truth. Ancient philosophers and spiritual teachers have described our reality as an invisible prison, where we remain unaware of our true potential, trapped by veils of limited perception that we mistake for complete reality. This prison has no physical bars, but is built by beliefs, social conditioning, and self-imposed limitations that we accept as absolute truths. From an early age, we absorb ideas about what is possible or impossible, creating imaginary boundaries that we rarely question. These boundaries form the structure of the illusion that keeps us in a state of reduced consciousness. The occult knowledge held by ancient civilizations suggests that there is a much vaster reality beyond our common perception. In Egyptian temples, Tibetan monasteries, and Greek mystery schools, initiates learned techniques to see beyond the veil of illusion. This knowledge was not shared widely because it required a mind prepared to understand it without distortions. Modern science is beginning to confirm some aspects of these ancestral teachings. Quantum physics demonstrates that solid matter is mostly empty space. That observation affects the outcome of experiments, and that reality at the subatomic level behaves in ways that defy our everyday logic. These scientific discoveries come close to mystical concepts about the illusory nature of reality. But why would we live in an illusion? Some teachings suggest that this condition is not accidental, but deliberately structured to limit our consciousness. Like characters in a virtual reality game who have forgotten they are playing, we may be experiencing just a fraction of what is truly possible in conscious existence. The illusion works because we rarely question it. We accept the rules of the game as if they were immutable laws of nature. However, those who have managed to break through these limitations report experiences of expanding consciousness where the common rules of reality seem flexible or even optional. Mystical experiences, altered states of consciousness, and paranormal phenomena can be glimpses of a reality beyond illusion. Recognizing the illusory nature of our perception is the first step towards profound transformation. When we begin to question the limits we accept as reality, we open up the possibility of experiencing the world in a completely new way. The veil that keeps us trapped begins to become thinner, allowing us to glimpse our true potential beyond appearances. Ancestral knowledge lost through the ages suggests that we can exercise absolute control over our personal reality. This is not a new concept. Ancient civilizations such as the Egyptians, Mayans, and Tibetans mastered specific techniques for shaping the events and circumstances around them through the conscious manipulation of invisible energies. These methods were carefully stored in esoteric texts and transmitted only to initiates ready for such responsibility. Have you ever wondered why some days seem to flow easily while others are full of obstacles? This feeling of being pulled by opposing forces is no mere coincidence. In fact, it is a direct reflection of the contradictory energies that inhabit our being, and that without our conscious knowledge are constantly shaping the experiences we attract into our lives. These forces are not external. They emerge from within, reflecting themselves in the material world as mirrors of our internal state. Contemporary scientists are beginning to investigate what mystics have always known. Observation affects reality at the quantum level. The famous double-slit experiment demonstrates that subatomic particles behave differently when observed, suggesting a fundamental connection between consciousness and matter. This principle, amplified to our human scale, indicates that our attention and intention have real power over how reality manifests in our lives. External manipulations also exist. We are constantly bombarded by influences that try to direct our choices and perceptions. Through media, conventional education, and social norms, we absorb programming that limits our ability to realize and utilize our true potential to shape reality. These external influences often keep us in low vibrational states where conscious control seems impossible. The ancient masters taught that our reality is essentially malleable, not a rigid structure, but a responsive field that reflects the state of our consciousness. When we experience resistance or conflict in our lives, it often indicates an internal misalignment. Our conscious intentions can conflict with subconscious beliefs, creating contradictory realities that leave us confused and frustrated. True, control of reality begins with the unification of our internal energies. When our thoughts, emotions, words, and actions align in a single direction, our ability to influence the world around us multiplies exponentially. Masters from various spiritual traditions have demonstrated abilities that appear miraculous to the ordinary eye, but are simply manifestations of a state of internal coherence rarely achieved by the average person. Some practices for this control include visualization techniques, affirmations aligned with corresponding emotions, and specific breathing methods that synchronize the different aspects of our being. When used consistently, these practices begin to dissolve the barriers between the internal and external world, allowing our conscious intention to materialize with less and less resistance and manifestation time. The path to mastering control of reality is neither instantaneous nor simple. It requires dedication, consistent practice, and a willingness to face and transform the darkest aspects of our being. However, those who persist on this path report a profound transformation in how they experience life, moving from victims of circumstances to conscious creators of their own reality. Within each human being, there are 4 distinct dimensions of existence, often called bodies, that operate simultaneously at different vibrational frequencies. These 4 dimensions, physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, constitute the totality of who we are and determine how we experience and interact with the world. Ancestral traditions such as Egyptian Hermeticism, Indian yoga, and shamanic practices, they recognize these 4 forces as essential components of the complete human experience. The physical body is the most dense and tangible, the one we can see and touch. It serves as the vehicle for our consciousness on the material plane, and is the receptacle through which we experience physical sensations. However, it is not isolated. Each cell of the physical body is constantly influenced by the other 3, more subtle bodies, which transmit information and energies in constant communication. When your physical body presents symptoms or discomforts, these are often manifestations of imbalances originating in the more subtle bodies. The emotional body, or astral body as it is called in some traditions, is the repository of our emotions, feelings, and desires. This body vibrates at a higher frequency than the physical and serves as a bridge between the material world and the subtler realms of thought and spirit. Your emotions are not just passive reactions to circumstances, but active energetic forces that radiate from you, influencing your health, relationships, and even seemingly external events. The quality of your emotional experience largely determines the quality of your life as a whole. The mental body comprises your thoughts, beliefs, memories, and cognitive patterns. This body operates at an even higher and faster frequency than the emotional one. It is through the mental body that we interpret our experiences, form judgments, and create meaning. Your belief system, both conscious and unconscious, works like a filter that determines which possibilities you can perceive and which remain invisible to you. The limits of your reality are first established in this mental body. The spiritual body, also called the causal body or Buddha body in several traditions, is the most improved and elevated of the 4. This body connects your individual consciousness with the universal or cosmic consciousness. It is the portal through which you access heightened states of consciousness, deep inspiration, and connection with the whole. When this body is active and balanced, you experience clarity of purpose, meaningful synchronicities, and a sense of inner guidance that transcends logical thinking. The fundamental problem most people face is that these four bodies rarely work in harmony. The physical body may be tired while the mind is hyperactive. Emotions may be in turmoil while the spirit seeks peace. This internal disharmony creates a state of energetic civil war, where different aspects of your being pull in opposite directions, wasting vital energy and creating blockages to the manifestation of your deepest desires. The symptoms of this misalignment are easily recognizable. You may have mental clarity about your goals, but feel emotionally resistant to pursuing them. Or you may feel a spiritual pull towards certain changes, but encounter resistance on a physical or mental level. These internal contradictions are the root cause of many forms of human suffering, from physical illness to existential crises. When the four bodies work in opposition, you experience internal fragmentation and loss of personal power. Ancestral cultures developed specific techniques to harmonize these four bodies. Practices such as yoga, tai chi, meditation, and sacred rituals, they were designed precisely to create coherence between these different dimensions of being. When the four bodies are aligned and functioning in synergy, you experience a state of flow where the manifestation of your desires occurs naturally and easily, without the usual feeling of struggle or overexertion. Aligning these four bodies is not just a matter of personal well-being, but the foundation for any real and lasting transformation in your life. When you learn to recognize and harmonize these four inner forces, you pave the way for an integrated existence where your thoughts, emotions, physical actions, and spiritual inspiration work together like a finely tuned orchestra, allowing you to express your fullest potential and manifest your intentions with power and precision. Misalignment between the four internal bodies is such a common condition that most people accept it as a normal state of human existence. When your physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual bodies are operating on different frequencies or pursuing contradictory goals, you experience a constant state of internal friction that manifests as chronic frustration. This energetic dissonance is similar to driving a car with the brakes on. You consume much more energy to move much less forward. The frustration resulting from this misalignment is not just a passing discomfort, but a corrosive force that gradually drains your vitality and clouds your clarity of purpose. Studies in the area of psychoneuroimmunology demonstrate that persistent, negative emotional states such as frustration and anxiety have a direct impact on the immune system, increasing stress hormones and decreasing the body's natural ability to regenerate. What begins as a subtle energetic conflict eventually manifests as physical exhaustion, chronic illness, and accelerated aging. You've probably noticed this pattern in your own life, periods when, despite all your efforts and good intentions, there seems to be an invisible force working against you. Maybe you set clear goals mentally, but feel an inexplicable emotional resistance to pursuing them. Or perhaps you feel a strong spiritual urge to make changes, but find your physical body lacking enough energy to implement them. These internal contradictions create a self-perpetuating cycle of enthusiastic beginnings followed by frustrating stagnation. The frustration, exhaustion, stagnation cycle works like an energetic prison, keeping you stuck in limiting patterns and preventing you from expressing your true potential. The nature of this prison is particularly insidious because its walls are invisible, built not of stone and steel, but of limiting beliefs, unresolved emotional trauma, harmful physical habits, and spiritual disconnection. Because they are invisible, these walls are rarely questioned or challenged directly. When you remain in this state of misalignment for prolonged periods, you develop coping mechanisms that mask the problem without solving it. Stimulants like caffeine to offset chronic fatigue, constant entertainment to distract from inner dissatisfaction, seeking external validation to fill a void of purpose. These are just a few of the many temporary substitutes we use to endure the discomfort of internal misalignment without addressing its root cause. The true cost of this misalignment goes far beyond personal suffering. At a collective level, a society composed mostly of internally fragmented individuals produces equally fragmented systems and institutions. The global problems we face today From environmental crises to geopolitical conflicts can be seen as external manifestations of our collective internal misalignment. The disconnect between our professed values and our actions, between our knowledge and our conduct, precisely reflects the disharmony between our four bodies. Misalignment also impedes true creative manifestation. When your four bodies are pulling in different directions, your creative energy becomes scattered and diluted. You may have inspiring visions, but lack the physical energy to implement them, or have refined technical skills but feel emotionally disconnected from your work. In a state of inner alignment, on the other hand, creation flows naturally, not as a result of forced effort, but as a spontaneous expression of an integrated being. The good news is that this misalignment is not a permanent condition, but an acquired state that can be transformed. Just as a musical instrument can be tuned, its four bodies can be harmonized through specific practices. The first step in this process is simply to acknowledge the existence of misalignment, to honestly observe the moments when different aspects of your being are in conflict. This awareness alone begins to dissolve the fragmentation patterns that previously operated below the radar of your conscious awareness. In ancient traditions around the world, there were sophisticated methods for harmonizing the four bodies and achieving a state of internal balance. This knowledge was not random or based on superstition, but systems carefully developed and tested over thousands of years by advanced civilizations that deeply understood the multidimensional nature of the human being. From the temples of Luxor in Egypt, to the monasteries of Tibet, to the centers of mystery in ancient Greece, these techniques were considered the most valuable and powerful teachings available to humanity. What all of these traditions had in common was the recognition that true balance cannot be achieved by working with just one dimension of being. Unlike fragmented modern approaches, where we treat the physical body with medicine, the mind with psychotherapy, the emotions with another intervention, and the spirit with separate religious practices, ancient traditions approached the human being as a unified system. They understood that a change in any dimension inevitably affects all others, and that true healing only occurs when all dimensions are addressed simultaneously. The basis of these ancient methods was the rhythmic synchronization of the four bodies. Through practices that created resonance between them, imagine four musical instruments playing in different harmonies. By carefully tuning each one, eventually they begin to resonate together, creating a symphony rather than a cacophony. Likewise, these ancient practices utilize specific combinations of physical movement, controlled breathing, mental focus, and spiritual intention to gradually bring the four bodies into a state of vibratory coherence. A crucial element of these methods was the recognition of natural cycles and cosmic rhythms. Ancient traditions carefully observed the patterns of nature, lunar phases, solar cycles, seasonal changes, and aligned their practices with these rhythms. They knew that the human being does not exist isolated from the cosmos, but is an integral part of it. Therefore, synchronizing internal activities with external cycles created a state of expanded resonance that multiplied the effectiveness of practices. Certain exercises were most powerful at certain times of the day, month, or year, and initiates learned to work with these patterns rather than against them. Another fundamental aspect of these ancient methods was the conscious use of natural substances to facilitate realignment. Specific plants, minerals, and alchemical preparations were used not as drugs to mask symptoms, but as precise catalysts to facilitate communication between different bodies. These substances were administered in carefully structured ritualistic contexts, with the specific intention of dissolving energetic blockages and restoring the natural flow between the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual dimensions. Sound and vibration techniques occupied a central place in these systems of balance. The ancients understood that sound is not just a sensory phenomenon, but a force that reorders the structure of matter and energy. Mantras, chants, percussion, and specific instruments were used with mathematical precision to induce altered states of consciousness and reorganize the vibratory patterns of the four bodies. Each tradition developed its own sound alphabet, specific combinations of frequencies that, when produced correctly, had the power to completely transform the energetic state of the practitioner. An often overlooked element in modern interpretations of these traditions is the role of community and social context. Ancestral methods were rarely practiced in total isolation. Rather, they generally occurred within a community of practitioners who shared the same worldview and intention. This collective field of consciousness amplified the power of individual practices, creating a supportive environment where profound transformations could safely occur. The ancients understood that the human being is inherently social and that individual balance is intrinsically linked to collective balance. The most revolutionary aspect of these ancient methods was their ability to transcend linear time. Through specific states of consciousness induced by these practices, initiates could access and reconfigure patterns from the past that continued to influence the present. This was not a form of psychological regression as we understand it today, but a true multidimensional transition where consciousness could interact directly with energetic structures outside the linear flow of time. Through this process, traumas and limiting impressions from past experiences could be transformed at their source, releasing previously blocked potential. The rediscovery and adaptation of these ancestral methods to the contemporary context represents one of the greatest opportunities for the evolution of human consciousness in our time. Although many aspects of this knowledge have been lost, fragmented, or distorted over the centuries, the fundamental principles remain accessible to those who sincerely seek. By integrating ancient wisdom with our modern scientific understanding, we can develop approaches that honor the complexity of the human being and offer practical pathways to realigning the four bodies and manifesting our highest potential. The physical body represents the foundation of all our experience on this plane of existence. Unlike what many purely spiritualist philosophies suggest, the deepest traditions have always recognized the physical body not as an obstacle to transcendence, but as the sacred temple through which all authentic transformation must occur. This dense body that we inhabit is the most concrete materialization of our consciousness, the point where the unreal becomes real and where our energies find expression in the material world. The relationship between our physical body and the earth follows a fundamental principle of resonance. Our ancient ancestors understood that the human body is literally made of the same elements that make up the planet, not just metaphorically, but in a real biochemical sense. The natural frequency of the healthy human body is in harmony with the Earth's Schumann frequency, approximately 7.3 Hz, creating a state of bioenergetic coherence that allows for the optimized flow of vital energy. When this resonance is disrupted, the entire system begins to function in a state of energetic dissonance. Toxins introduced into our modern environment represent one of the greatest threats to this natural frequency. Processed foods, chemical preservatives, pesticides, heavy metals, artificial electromagnetic fields, and air pollutants are not just harmful in a biochemical sense. They fundamentally alter the vibrational signature of cells, tissues, and organs. This vibratory interference compromises not only basic physiological functions, but also our ability to perceive and interact with more subtle frequencies that contain essential information for our conscious evolution. An intoxicated physical body works like a poorly tuned radio receiver. Signals arrive distorted or completely blocked. Intuition, extrasensory perception, and communication with more subtle dimensions are not abstract mystical abilities, but natural functions of a neurobiological system operating in its optimal state. When we accumulate toxins, we literally lose our ability to tune into frequencies that contain vital information for our journey through reality. Decisions made in this state of detuning often lead us into further imbalance, creating a downward cycle of diminished consciousness. The impact of this detuning extends to our ability to manifest. Manifestation is not a purely mental or emotional process, but requires a physical body capable of acting as a conductor and amplifier of intentions. To materialize any desire or intention, we need to have cells capable of vibrating in resonance with the frequency of what we wish to attract. A body overloaded with toxins and operating at dissonant frequencies becomes a filter that blocks, rather than facilitates, the process of materializing our deepest desires. The revitalization of the physical body should be considered not just a health issue, but the foundation of any authentic spiritual practice. Detoxification techniques, biocompatible nutrition, regular exposure to nature, conscious movement and contact with bare earth do not. They are luxuries, but fundamental necessities to restore our ability to function as multidimensional beings. Each cell freed from toxicity becomes a more accurate receiver and more powerful transmitter in the unified field of consciousness. Ancestral wisdom offers specific protocols for re-establishing the natural frequency of the physical body. Seasonal. Fasts, ritual baths with specific elements, exposure to sounds at precise frequencies and breathing practices, they were used not only to cleanse the body of impurities, but to recalibrate its vibratory signature. These practices recognize that the human body has a perfect design that, when functioning at its ideal frequency, naturally aligns with broader cosmic rhythms, facilitating a state of flow where manifestation occurs with minimal resistance. Unleashing the full potential of the physical body requires a conscious reconnection with the fundamental elements: earth, water, fire, air, and ether. Each element has a specific role in recalibrating different aspects of the physical system. Contact with the earth stabilizes the body's electromagnetic field. Water facilitates the transmission of information between cells. Fire, in the form of filtered sunlight, activates essential photobiological processes. Fresh air carries negative ions that balance cellular electrical charge. And exposure to space, in the form of gazing at the night sky or periods of silence, recalibrates our circadian rhythms. This elemental reconnection is not a romantic return to nature, but a scientific necessity to optimize our bioenergetic functioning. Emotions are not merely passive reactions to external circumstances, but powerful energetic forces that actively shape our reality. Every emotional state you experience emits a measurable electromagnetic field that extends far beyond the limits of your physical body. Searches for Instituto HeartMath demonstrated that the heart's electromagnetic field can be detected several meters away from the body, and that this field contains coded information that influences nearby biological systems, including other people and even cells in petri dishes. When you experience an emotion, you are not just having an internal subjective experience, you are literally transmitting an energetic frequency into the environment around you. These emotional frequencies interact with the quantum field that forms the basis of material reality, attracting experiences that correspond to their vibrational signature. This is not a mystical or supernatural process, but a phenomenon based on resonance, a fundamental law of physics that dictates that similar vibratory systems naturally attract and amplify each other. Low-frequency emotions like fear, anger, guilt, and shame create a constricted and distorted energy field that literally repels the manifestations you consciously want to attract. When your emotional body vibrates predominantly at these frequencies, you become like a magnet for experiences that reflect and reinforce these states. Most people live in a negative feedback loop where low-frequency emotions attract challenging circumstances, which in turn generate more low-frequency emotions, creating a seemingly inescapable downward spiral. Ancestral traditions recognize the dual nature of emotions as indicators of our internal state and as powerful tricks for conscious transformation. Unlike modern psychology, which often seeks only to understand emotions, ancient systems developed precise techniques to transmute them. Emotional alchemy does not consist of suppressing negative emotions, but of using the energy contained in them as fuel for conscious elevation, just as a rocket uses the resistance of gravity as a means to transcend it. Conscious control of emotions begins with the ability to distinguish between primary and secondary emotions. Primary emotions are direct responses to present stimuli, while secondary emotions are reactions to our own emotions or thoughts about emotions. For example, feeling fearful when encountering real danger is a useful primary emotion, but feeling anxious about feeling fearful in the future is a secondary emotion that often causes more harm than good. Ancestral traditions taught specific methods for stopping the cascade of secondary emotions that amplify and prolong unnecessary suffering. The ability to consciously alter your emotional state represents one of the most powerful skills a human being can develop. Masters from diverse traditions have demonstrated the ability to maintain heightened emotional states, even in extremely challenging circumstances. This is not a form of denial or dissociation, but a practical recognition that emotional state is a moment-to-moment choice, not an automatic reaction determined by external circumstances. Emotional freedom, the ability to choose your internal state regardless of external conditions, is the basis of true autonomy. Specific techniques for cultivating heightened emotions include conscious breathing, which immediately alters the biochemistry of the nervous system, guided visualization, which activates the same neural circuits involved in real experiences, and somatic practices that use posture, movement, and facial expression to induce state-specific emotions. Consistent practice of these techniques not only offers momentary control, but literally rewires the nervous system over time, elevating your emotional baseline and expanding your ability to sustain heightened emotional states for increasingly longer periods of time. The emotional body also functions as a critical bridge between the physical and mental realms. While pure thoughts may remain abstractions with no material impact, when infused with emotional charge, they gain the power to reorganize physical matter. This is the reason why purely mental affirmations often fail to produce real results. They lack the emotional energy necessary to impact the quantum field. Ancestral traditions have always combined precise mental formulations with specific emotional states to create complete packages of intention capable of concrete manifestation. Emotional mastery does not mean an absence of emotions or a perpetual state of artificially maintained bliss, but a refined ability to consciously navigate the entire human emotional spectrum. An emotional master can experience sadness without being consumed by it, can feel anger without being controlled by it, and can transform the energy of these emotions into fuel for constructive action. This emotional fluidity, combined with conscious discernment, allows you to utilize the entire emotional spectrum to transition and manifest in a universe fundamentally responsive to emotional frequency. From the first moments of consciousness, our mind absorbs and internalizes information from the environment around us. This process of mental programming begins long before we develop the ability to critically filter what we absorb. During the first 7 years of life, the brain operates predominantly in waves theta, a highly receptive state similar to hypnosis, where information is absorbed directly into the subconscious without the filter of critical thinking. In this formative period, we internalize fundamental beliefs about ourselves, others, and how the world works. These initial schedules come not only from explicit verbal instructions, but also from observed behaviors, emotional responses of caregivers, and the broader socio-cultural context. A child does not need to be explicitly told that money is scarce and hard to come by to absorb this belief. It is enough to witness parental anxiety about finances, observe conflicts over limited resources, or notice patterns of scarcity in the family environment. These subconscious impressions often have greater impact than the verbal messages we receive. As we grow, these subconscious programmings continue to operate below the level of our consciousness, generating automatic thoughts, emotional reactions, and behaviors that can completely contradict our conscious intentions. For example, you may consciously desire financial abundance, but if you carry subconscious programming of "I don't deserve wealth" or "money corrupts people," your own mental system works against your stated goals. This internal contradiction creates an experience of constant struggle, where progress in a given direction is often followed by unconscious self-sabotage. The ancient mystery systems recognized this phenomenon and developed sophisticated methodologies for accessing and reprogramming the subconscious. Techniques such as ritual initiations, use of altered states of consciousness, and rhythmic repetition of mantras specifics were designed precisely to bypass the conscious mind and communicate directly with the deeper layers of the psyche. These approaches were not primitive superstitions, but advanced psychological technologies based on a deep understanding of how the human mind processes and stores information at different levels of consciousness. Modern science confirms the effectiveness of these ancient approaches through research into neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections throughout life. Studies show that consistent practices like meditation, guided visualization, and specific affirmations, they can literally reconfigure neural circuits, transforming deeply rooted mental patterns. The brain is not a static structure, but a dynamic organ that constantly remodels itself in response to the stimuli and practices to which it is regularly exposed. A crucial aspect of mental reprogramming is the recognition that the subconscious mind responds primarily to symbolic language, not logical reasoning. While the conscious mind operates through linear analysis and verbal processing, the subconscious communicates through images, bodily sensations, emotions, and symbolism. This is why purely intellectual approaches often fail to produce lasting change. They simply don't speak the language of the part of the mind that controls these deep patterns. Effective mental reprogramming techniques always incorporate elements that directly engage this symbolic language of the subconscious. The process of mental reprogramming is not just a matter of replacing negative thoughts with positive ones, but a complete recalibration of your fundamental perceptual filters. Our perception of reality is not a passive recording of objective, sensory data, but an active process of construction informed by our subconscious beliefs. Two people can observe exactly the same event and have radically different experiences based on their perceptual filters. When you reprogram your belief system, you literally change the world you experience, not because external reality has changed, but because your perceptual filters have been recalibrated to register possibilities previously invisible to you. A particularly powerful technique for mental reprogramming is the deliberate use of hypnagogic and hypnopompic states, the transitional states between wakefulness and sleep. In these brief periods, the mind naturally goes through theta waves, opening a window of direct access to the subconscious similar to that of early childhood. Ancestral cultures recognized the power of these liminal states and developed specific protocols for harnessing them. Establishing a consistent practice of intentional programming in these moments can produce profound transformations in a relatively short period of time, especially when combined with vivid visualization and full emotional engagement. The true mastery of mental reprogramming goes beyond simply replacing limiting beliefs with more expansive beliefs. It involves transcending the belief level completely. The deepest traditions teach that the highest state is one in which the mind becomes completely flexible and responsive, free from any rigid programming, able to temporarily adopt any perspective helpful to a specific situation without permanently identifying with it. This mental fluidity allows for an extraordinary capacity for transition and adaptation in an ever-changing universe, releasing creative potentials that remain inaccessible to those trapped in fixed, even positive, mental structures. The spiritual body, often called the subtle or energetic body in esoteric traditions, represents a fundamental dimension of our existence that transcends physical materiality. This energetic layer that surrounds us is considered by many ancient philosophies to be the main body of our consciousness and the link between our earthly experience and our deepest spiritual nature. Throughout human history, from the yogis of ancient India to Western mystics, recognition of this subtle body has been a central element in spiritual development. Conscious breathing appears as a direct bridge to access and revitalize this spiritual body. When we breathe, we are not only supplying our body with oxygen necessary for biological functions, but we are also manipulating vital energy. This energy permeates the entire universe, and through intentional breathing, we can capture it and direct it to our energy system, renewing our vitality on levels that go beyond the merely physical. Ancient yoga texts describe specific breathing techniques that were developed precisely to cleanse and strengthen the energetic channels of the spiritual body. Techniques such as alternate breathing or fire breathing are not just physical exercises, but powerful practices for unblocking stagnant areas of our energy field, allowing energy to flow freely and raise our personal vibration. This connection between breath and the spiritual body is particularly relevant in our contemporary world, where stress and disconnection seem endemic. When we practice conscious breathing, even if for just a few minutes a day, we create a space of stillness amidst the chaos of modern life. This moment of presence allows our spiritual body to realign and strengthen, providing a feeling of centering that many describe as coming home. Modern science is beginning to recognize the tangible benefits of conscious breathing, identifying its effects on the nervous system, especially in activating the parasympathetic system, responsible for the state of rest and digest. When we breathe deeply, we send signals to the brain that reduce the production of stress hormones such as cortisol and adrenaline, creating a physiological state that mirrors the serenity associated with spiritual development. To start a simple practice, you can try breathing deeply for 5 seconds, holding the breath for 2 seconds and exhaling for 7 seconds. This specific ratio, when repeated for a few minutes, begins to slow the heart rate and calm the mind, creating ideal conditions to feel the subtle presence of the spiritual body. Over time, you may notice sensations such as warmth, tingling, or a slight vibration in different parts of the body. Many practitioners interpret these sensations as direct perception of energy circulating through the subtle body. The gradual awakening of the spiritual body through conscious breathing often triggers a series of transformations in various aspects of life. People report greater mental clarity, improved intuition, and a more defined sense of purpose. These are not mysterious results, but natural consequences of a balanced and vibrant energetic system which functions as a more refined receptor for the subtle information that constantly surrounds us. It is important to remember that the spiritual body is not an entity separate from our being, but an integral extension of who we are. Breathing is an accessible and democratic method to nourish this essential dimension, not requiring special equipment, religious affiliations, or advanced knowledge. It is a gift that belongs to all of us by birthright, just waiting to be rediscovered and applied to reveal the deep spiritual vitality that resides in every human being. The process of spiritual awakening is linked to the development of energetic autonomy, the ability to consciously manage and direct our own vital energy. This autonomy represents a fundamental transformation in the way we relate to the world, as it allows us to transcend the role of mere passive recipients of external circumstances to become active creators of our reality. By understanding the mechanisms by which our energy influences our life experience, we begin to realize the transformative potential that resides within each of us. The breathing techniques mentioned above function as powerful catalysts in this awakening process. When we practice conscious breathing regularly, we are not just accumulating isolated moments of tranquility, we are effectively recalibrating our basic vibrational frequency. This gradual recalibration raises our energetic baseline, allowing us to maintain heightened states of consciousness for increasingly longer periods of time, even in the midst of everyday challenges. It is as if we are strengthening a spiritual muscle that, over time, becomes capable of sustaining progressively greater loads. Energetic autonomy also manifests itself in our ability to remain centered in different environments. Many people report that, before developing this skill, they felt easily affected by the energies of the places they frequented or the people they interacted with, a phenomenon commonly described as absorbing the mood or vibration of others. With the development of conscious control over our energy field, we learn to maintain our vibrational integrity even in challenging situations, without emotionally isolating ourselves from others. This aspect of energetic autonomy is particularly relevant in an era characterized by constant stimuli and informational overload. The incessant bombardment of news, social media, and professional demands creates an environment prone to energy dispersion and burnout. By cultivating the ability to consciously manage our energy, we develop a kind of energetic immune system that protects us against the dissipation of our life force, allowing us to remain aligned with our deepest values and purposes. The relationship between thought, emotion, and energetic field constitutes another crucial element of energetic autonomy. Every thought we cultivate and every emotion we allow to reside in our consciousness directly influences our personal vibration. When we recognize this interconnection, we begin to take responsibility not only for our external actions, but also for our mental and emotional hygiene. Practices such as conscious monitoring of thoughts, intentional cultivation of heightened emotional states, and energetic transmutation techniques become valuable in our personal development repertoire. The law of resonance, a fundamental principle, in many esoteric traditions, explains how our personal vibration attracts corresponding experiences, operating as a natural manifestation mechanism. When we consistently raise our vibrational frequency through mindful breathing practices and other energetic techniques, we begin to naturally attract circumstances, opportunities, and relationships that reflect this elevated state. This process does not occur by magic or coincidence, but by a precise alignment between our internal state and the possibilities that we can perceive and take advantage of in the external world. True transformation begins when we fully internalize the understanding that we are the primary architects of our life experience. Many people live in a state of unconscious victimization, attributing their well-being and circumstances to external factors over which they feel they have little or no control. The development of energetic autonomy represents a paradigmatic shift in this perspective, as it reveals to us that although we cannot control all external events, we have absolute power over our energetic response to these events. And this response, in turn, profoundly shapes our subsequent reality. The path to energetic mastery is a spiral process of continuous expansion. Each new level of consciousness presents us with subtler challenges and deeper opportunities for refinement. The beauty of this journey lies precisely in its infinite nature. There is no end point of complete enlightenment, but an ever-expanding horizon of possibilities for growth and transformation. As we accept this invitation to continued evolution, we discover that the true purpose of energetic autonomy is not only to improve our individual circumstances, but to contribute to the elevation of collective consciousness through the living example of higher possibilities of human existence.